Hello and welcome back to WTFMCP, where we just tell you everything we know, which isn't a lot, about Marvel Crisis Protocol.
We're all learning it together, right?
That's, well, yeah, at our own speeds.
At our own speeds,
I'm
even
Jay.
if it's slow.
Yeah, I'm Jay Schlansky. That's Tim France. We are going to continue talking about events this week, and we're going to talk about the Challenger GT event, which is now basically the same, and teams.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not slow at all, Tim. I was really fast on cutting you off there. So I
Listen,
hope
I
you.
play a lot of Juggernaut and Crossbones. Like all my characters are slow.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. But he's the juggernaut. Um,
It's true. He moves slow a lot, but it is slow.
it is slow. Yeah. All right. So let's talk. We're probably, when this comes out, we're probably a few weeks removed from the announcement of AMG. They're basically doing these grand tournaments or whatever they're calling them, and they are doing MCP as challenger events. Which different from, we talked about this with affiliation, where affiliation is only characters in your affiliation.
Mhm.
Challenger events is 50% or over 50% have to be within an affiliation in order for you to use your leader's ability, but you can have multiple affiliations within your roster.
Correct. Yep. And we've seen, especially with characters like Emma Frost out there, like being able to add another full affiliation with a single character and a single tactics card can make you very versatile,
Yeah.
which is very cool to see. And with Challenger, unlike affiliation or timeline, there really aren't many restrictions as far as what you bring.
Right, right.
Um, there is kind of an annual, not annual, but like every once in a while they'll update, kind of what the banned and restricted list is. Some cards cycle out, some cards cycle in, but it's a very short list as far as
Yeah.
what's kind of no longer out there, in compared to the grand scheme of things. But Challenger is in fact your weekend tournament. It is your 3-day event tournament. Like Challenger is very standard tournament play, Swiss rounds
Yeah.
for MCP. And the
Yeah.
GT kind of mirrors that or
Yeah.
brings the Challenger event document kind of into a bigger fold.
Right, which I think makes sense and is like Challenger is a GT level event, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you want like a premier event to see how good people are at MCP, you have them play Challenger. And I think affiliation and timeline and teams that we're going to talk about soon are all variations on playing the game, but I think Challenger is like probably the truest version of competitive that MCP is going to see.
Yep, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, especially at a very standard level as far as like what you would expect from going to a competitive event.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so basically I mean, there's not a lot to talk about with Challenger because it's pretty straightforward. It's it's
You
just
bring your roster of 10, you bring your
yeah,
10 tactics cards, you bring your 6 crisis. You make sure you only have 2 restricted and no banned cards.
right.
And yeah, that's it.
That's
You get
it.
paired up, there's a cut, you're good.
Yeah. And I think I would probably just say, because these are some of the things I learned early on was, you can mainline, let's say you mainline Avengers like I did, and you can splash with like a Beta Ray Bill or like these other characters that'll play well within. But one of the cool things that I learned and saw somebody did was they had their 10 character roster or whatever, but they had all the characters could do multiple affiliations.
Yes.
So like I think I forgot what it was. Maybe it was Midnight Suns and Avengers or something like that, where or I forgot. But where you can have every character of your 10 can be either affiliation, which is
Yep.
wild. Uh
Well, there's nice synergies out there. Like Shield and Avengers play very nicely
yeah,
together. X-Men, Brotherhood, and X-Force.
yeah.
Um, Spider Foes and Criminal Syndicate also blend very nicely.
That's it's really interesting. Like the different variations you could have, but you could also have things that make no sense, but it just works together, like a buddy of mine's playing X Factor with Baron Zemo.
Yeah,
because it's just really good, you know? And so,
there's a roster we saw, I think it was in the Challenger event at Adepticon, that was pretty much all leaders and Baron Zemo as a Avengers reserve member. So we had Captain America, any one of them, uh, Cable, Black Panther is also an Avenger and a leader. So the whole reserve unit or reserve member thing is like, hey, as long as you're near a leader, whether they're the active one or not, like you get a whole bunch of bonuses.
yeah,
So Baron Zemo was just bouncing around the table, always near Cable, Black Panther, Captain America, Hulkbuster, you know, anything like that.
yeah,
Invincible Iron Man, like
yeah, it's so so good. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's probably one, though I do love affiliation and teams. I think Challenger's probably my favorite.
which and it really should be the bread and butter, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone's running an event at your LGS or at a smaller con or you're starting to get a group going, like Challenger is a very nice way to kind of get the community going a little bit.
Yeah, though it seems easy to be affiliation, sometimes it can be difficult, especially if you're just playing with all kinds of characters at home. So like
Mhm.
having the challenger just be like, yeah, just here's the rules, you know, here's your banned and restricted list. Go ahead, make whatever you want, right? And you don't even have to be affiliated. It doesn't even matter for challenger.
There is so on Longshanks, I do know that there's like an unaffiliated, there's a group of people only playing unaffiliated, so they can go after that title.
Yeah.
Which respect to them.
Yeah,
Like
that's so funny. But yeah, and all right, so coming up next, let's talk about teams tournaments.
so there's a number of different formats for teams. The go-to for me is the Adepticon team up battle. How this differs, it kind of follows a lot of the standard challenger rules.
Yep,
Each team member plays together, though. You're playing the same game against another two opponents. You bring in, is it five tactics cards each, and then
yep,
like seven characters?
yep.
So you end up, your total roster ends up being 10 tactics cards, 14 characters. It might even be six each for tactics cards, but you bring in the same
Yeah, maybe
list
5 or 6.
of crisis cards, and then when you end up going to play the game, once again, all standard challenger rules, except when the crisis is chosen, you add six, I believe, threat
Yeah.
the total, so that you can bring in more characters. Then each person brings in three tactics cards each for a total of six instead of five total. Um, and then you're kind of off to the races.
Yeah, and the only bigger caveat is there you like I couldn't bring all of my characters. So you have to bring roughly the same point values worth of characters as your
It's like
teammate.
plus or minus one or two or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
To make it somewhat even.
Right, because the problem is like if like when Nick and I played, we were doing Avengers and X-Men, and a lot of the times we want to use the new Steve because changing your dice is good. Uh, and so I would end up bringing 2 or 3, and then he'd end up with 2, and we'd be like minus. He'd always end up being like -2, just because it was how it would fit in to
Mm-hmm.
to the system. Because sometimes numbers are hard. Uh,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
that's a big part of it, right? Is at
yeah,
the end of the day, it's like you have your tactics cards, which you can bring three of in. Are
yep,
there restricted cards that you always bring in yours or your teammates?
right.
Same with the characters that you need to make affiliation. Do you give one guy the splashes and one guy has that normal core where he's always bringing the same 14 base or something like that?
Yeah.
Like it is interesting in how you kind of divvy stuff up. And I think that's a very interesting part of that format. And I
Yeah.
really like to see how people approach it because I feel like based on your comfort level with your teammate, whether you even knew them ahead of time or not, or whether you got a pickup group like for an event, I'm very interested in kind of how that ends up all formulating.
Yeah, and I think even going down to like how you play and what and like who does what, and are you just running your list, are you doing but and I think there was a variation across the board of teams we played, how Nick and I played depending on the match. uh but there's a lot of like whispering with your opponent. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, blah, 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 what do you think I should do here?
Yeah.
uh there's times that like Nick or I would just be like, yeah, I don't know, man. You just whatever you think's best for this particular round. And so like, so it was just fun. It's just a good
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's just a good time. And it's always nice. I think MCP in general, losing isn't as big of a deal in for me and a lot of people I know that play this game. It doesn't feel as bitter as it does in other games, and just because
Yeah.
of the time and how much fun the game is. But it when you mess something up and you're by yourself, you can be very like self-loathing in that moment about screwing up. But when you mess something up and you're in a team and you're then it's you feel like it's almost like not as bad because you're like, all right, all right, all right, he's got my back or whatever. Um, yeah, so that's why I love teams, but there's other teams formats, right, Tim?
There are, yeah. So the team up is where you're really working head to head with the same person, and then there's the WTC and like the squad goals formats. In the US, we see both Iron Weld and Squad Goals running this. It's a 3x3 tournament. You go in with two buddies.
Yep.
Between your three rosters, you could have no repeats of tactics cards, crisis cards, or character cards. So kind of similar to Timeline, except you're kind of spreading that out and you all play the game simultaneously. You're not playing with anybody, but effectively the team that gets 2 wins out of the 3 matches, that team as a whole moves forward.
Yep.
And then WTC is the same thing, but 5 wide. So
Oh,
you can, yeah. So you really kind of have to be very specific of like, well, if someone's going to be running Avengers, we're going to give them all the best Avengers cards.
yeah.
But what crisis are going to work well with them and not with others? What tactics cards can we really allow to be there? And obviously the character splashes.
Okay, yeah.
So this would be like Timeline, except it doesn't have that restricted character list. It has the full Challenger event ban and restricted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
And
I
there's
like
kind of a
that
neat
too.
like rock paper scissors of
Yeah.
placing where your players are going to go, because if you win priority you get to choose what table you want to be on and
Oh,
who's going to play there. And then some of the other ones are blind, so you may know it's like, all right, well, we know we're going to lose against X guy over there,
yeah.
so let's send the weak list against there because we know we're going to lose anyway and put our strength elsewhere. Or do we have our good player go try to eke out a win and put them at a disadvantage as well?
Right.
It's I really like that kind of aspect to figuring out where you're going to put people as a larger team.
Yeah, that's cool. Nice. Yeah, I like
But you
that
don't get
too.
the camaraderie of playing the same game
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
and high fiving and then also being mad at them and whispering and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
yeah. Being mad is really good. I like being mad at them. Yeah. Well, that sounds good too.
so I mean, yeah, seeing as how we're doing multiple episodes on event types, there's a ton of them out there. The
Yeah.
Friday events and Sunday events of certain cons normally are loaded with a bunch of the awesome stuff out there, and I don't even really feel like calling them side events. The team
Yeah.
event or the team up event, yeah, that's a priority in itself. Same with what if,
That
same with
I
affiliation.
agree 100%. And especially like the one that we did at Adepticon did not feel like a side event at all. It
Nope.
felt very important, and very, and so but I think that's the great thing about MCP too, and I keep saying this. I love this game, right? I very much love this game. So everything is the great thing about MCP. But one of the good things is because the games are so time-wise short, you can get an entire tournament done in one day. And so when you have an event like Adepticon and you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, now you could get 4 separate events in, maybe more if you have the space over the course of a 4-day event.
Yep. Well, and it reduces that fatigue too, right? Where they are very different formats that you're
Yeah,
preparing for in very different ways. And it really does keep it fresh, which is nice.
yeah, it really does. But all right, another great episode in the books, Tim. You're a
Yeah,
professional.
absolutely. Power or no.
Yeah, you're really good at this. I'll tell everybody.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Join us next week as we continue telling you WTF MCP.